Good evening, everyone. I welcome the gallery and the press to the council meeting and remind you that the meeting is being recorded and live streamed to council's Facebook and YouTube pages. I would ask for everyone to please turn all mobile phones to silent mode. Please be aware that a hearing loop is available in the council chamber. Staff members are able to assist you with this at any time during the meeting. Please remain quiet in the gallery so that everyone can hear the meeting. Anyone disrupting the meeting may be asked to leave. I would also like to remind members of the public watching that the live stream that there is a copy of the agenda and information explaining council's meetings, which can be found on the council website. Tonight you will see that we have 9 reports in open council and 0 in closed council, a transparency rate of 100%. The reading of the prayer. Please stand as I call upon Pastor Graham Shan from Aspire Church to read the prayer.
Let's pray. Gracious God, we thank you for the city of Casey, its growth and development, and all that it has become, for the many families, individuals and businesses that have made it their home. We pray that you will guide the council as they meet tonight, that the decisions that are made will further strengthen the health and well-being of the city, as also provide for its future. We pray that those in positions of responsibility within the city, that they will have your wisdom in assessing the needs, finding solutions, as also building for the next generation of residents to call Casey home. We pray for wisdom and foresight in making Casey Australia's most livable city, that people from diverse cultural and social backgrounds will readily make this place a place to belong in harmony with the ethos of this city. We pray your blessing on tonight's proceedings. Amen.
Thank you, Pastor Shand. Could I please ask you to remain standing as I call upon Robin Zeddens, JP from the Casey Multi-Faith Network to read the faith statement. Thank you, Robin.
The Casey Multi-Faith Network exists to promote peace, harmony and understanding, and to do so in partnership with Casey Council and the wider Casey community. We aim to spread knowledge and clarity about what different religions or worldviews believe, teach and practice. We believe that all members of religions and faiths have the right to peacefully practice and celebrate their own religion in a shared attitude of friendly coexistence and cooperation with all other people. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Zeddens. Please be seated. The City of Casey proudly acknowledges the traditional owners, Casey's Aboriginal communities and their rich culture, and pays respects to their elders past, present and future. We acknowledge Aboriginal people as Australia's first peoples and as the traditional owners and custodians of the land on which we work and live. Moving on to apologies, we have a standing leave of absence for Councillor Rosario, who will be absent this evening, and I would like to add Councillor Millie Gillich to that leave of absence. That's moved by Councillor Rowe, seconded by Councillor Cristani. Is there any dissent? There being no dissent, that is carried. Suspension of local laws. I'd like to ask for a mover and a seconder to move the suspension of local laws until I determine to reapply the local law. So moved by Councillor Flannery, seconded by Councillor Saray. Is there any dissent? There being no dissent, that is carried. Councillors, we've got 2 items during the suspension of local law, and if I could just have your indulgence for 5 minutes to let those who are watching live stream and those in the gallery know about the upcoming Mayor's Walk for Disability. That's coming up. It's a week and a half away. It's going to run from Saturday the 14th of September right through to Sunday the 22nd of September, and it's going to, I will be going home to sleep because I have been asked that question, but it's a very comprehensive walk in that we'll be walking 10 kilometres a day, but we'll be stopping at wonderful locations. We'll be stopping at churches, parks, schools, universities. We'll be stopping at community centres, and we'll be stopping at a number of really important parks and locations around Casey. What we'll be doing is educating people, or just informing them more, because I think people are very educated in this area, but informing them of the issues facing people with a disability, and also showcasing the wonderful things that council are doing to support people with a disability and their carers. And probably one of the things I'd mention is the Carers Centre, the Carers Hub, which is running out of Lynbrook Community Centre every Friday between 10 and 2, and that's absolutely wonderful, the Carers Hub. So what we're also doing is actually raising funds for supported accommodation for adults with a disability who are currently living in the care of their ageing parents who are in their 70s, 80s and 90s. Now, I on one occasion knew a lady who was 100 who was looking after her adult child with a disability. She couldn't make it to a meeting because of her age, but it was all right for her to be looking after her adult child, which I found astounding. Some of these people are also living in rundown motel rooms, boarding houses and aged care facilities, which is totally unsuitable for the people in this age bracket. So there is a project that's running at the moment called Project 28, and that's what we're getting behind. It's a project that has an initiative to build 28 homes for 28 people with a disability here in the city of Casey by the year 2028. And that's a unique initiative by the Wolfdean Foundation, who have joined a partnership with Blair Logie Living and Learning Centre. And I'm hoping not only that we raise lots of funds, but I'm also hoping that other people, other developers, other businesses and other philanthropists want to join in a similar model with other disability service organisations. So I'm inviting the whole community to join me on this walk. I know my fellow councillors are going to be part of that walk also, which I'm really proud to say, and I would really love our community to come and meet us. I did this walk 5 years ago, and it was for a very similar reason, but we weren't actually raising funds for supported accommodation. But we actually got the whole community involved. It was fantastic, and we really loved the participation by the community. Now, if people can't walk, they can simply meet us at a community centre, or they can meet us at a school or a park and just meet us where we are. We'll have a talk and maybe a cup of tea, and then we'll move on. So that person will have been involved in some way. If not, we can just keep in contact via Facebook. But all the information, I've got cards here so anyone in the gallery tonight, if you'd like some information on the walk, there are cards there on the table, and also on our website. So for those that are live streaming, on our website, on our Facebook, there's information. It's got the itinerary and it's got the map. So please do go on, have a look, and we would love you to join us on this walk. This is number one on my bucket list because I think it's the greatest injustice is that people with a disability at this point don't have the rite of passage to leave home and to have their forever home. And I think they absolutely deserve that dignity and that respect from all of us. And that's what the Wolfdean Foundation are doing with Project 28, which is fantastic. So thank you very much for your indulgence, and I hope to see as many people on the Walk for Disability as possible. And I'm now going to defer to Councillor Smith, who has a more sober matter to raise.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Tonight I rise to bring to the attention of Council the passing of former City of Barrack Councillor and Mayor and Casey Councillor and Mayor John Hastie. We found some photos, which was fantastic. John passed away yesterday morning. He was 1 month away from being 81, so he'd done well, but he in the end the dreaded cancer took his life, which is a real shame. Can I acknowledge the former councillor and mayor, Rob Wilson's in the... Oh, there he is, up back there. And Rob helped me out. Rob's always good for the... He's good for history, and as he is a very good historian. And he helped me with a bit of a timeline for John. So John was first elected to the City of Barrack in 1983, and he served 8 years on the City of Barrack. He lost one election, but he got elected the next year, so I'm not sure what happened there. There must have been a by-election and he got elected back in. And then in that year, he was elected as the 15th Mayor of the City of Barrack. And that was during the bicentenary of Australia in 87, 88. So a big year for him. That's when I first met John, because I was working as a photographer for the Pakenham Gazette, and I used to I often would photograph John at various events that he attended around the city. He was re-elected to council in 1990, and in 1992 there was another total spill of Barrack, and he was re-elected again. And in 1994, as we all know, we all got jeffed, and so we all lost our positions for a couple of years. John was re-elected to the new City of Casey in 97. He was elected in 1999, although I think that was 98, because I think it was, yeah. He came in as mayor after me, and I finished in March 98, so he was the mayor from 97 to 98. And then at 98 to 99, I should say, and he was re-elected to council in year 2000, and he left council at the election of 2003. Between 83 and 95, he was the council rep on the library service, and he was MAV rep for many years, and he was a driving force behind the sister city links that the City of Barrack and consequently the City of Casey had for a long time. There are lots of stories about John, and most of them I can't tell, but the two things I will remember him, and former Councillor Wilson will remember these ones. John was a money man. You could always rely on John at budget time and at other times that he would be the one going through the budget with a fine-tooth comb. And Rob might remember one year we were on our budget weekend, and all of a sudden John Hastie came up and said, "I found $1 million." And we all sort of joked and said, "Yeah, right." And he had the officers went away and discovered that they had made an error, and there was an extra $1 million that we weren't counting on. And of course, Rob and myself and Brian Oates at the time, we were pretty good at it, and we grabbed it. We snapped it up, and we had it spent within seconds of it being discovered. But that was one of John's qualities. He was pedantic about dollars, and he always looked after the ratepayer dollar, and he was the one, to be honest, I didn't look too closely because you knew that John was on the case. The other story I have is the Hampton Park Library story. John, there were a couple of councillors who were against the Hampton Park Library, and John being one of them, and Mick Morland, famous story of Mick being against it. Both of them eventually changed their mind. John changed his mind on the night of the public meeting in Hampton Park. There were 600 people in a hall, pretty angry about the fact that council didn't look like it was supporting a library. John, prior to that meeting, was dead against it. He walked in the room, and he was asked would he like to speak, and John, never scared of a battle, he said, "Yep, I'll get up and speak." And to all our surprise, but we were glad, John got up and said, "I love the Hampton Park Library. I support the Hampton Park Library." He read the room. He knew it wasn't the place to say he didn't support it, and he got up and said it. So John was good at reading the situation and being able to make a last-minute change of mind or decision. So to his wife, Wilma, our condolences to Wilma and his family on his passing. Madam Mayor, like we did for Ken Reedy a couple of weeks ago, I'd ask if we consider lowering the flags on the day of his funeral, which is going to take place next Thursday, the 12th of September, at Tobin Brothers in Barrack, followed by burial at Barrack Cemetery. So he will be sadly missed by many people. There's a lot of legacies around town that can be attributed to John's diligence as a councillor in terms of finance, but also he did look after his ward. His ward was in Dever Hills where he lived, and he certainly looked after there, particularly in sporting facilities. So, Madam Mayor, I'm happy to call on a minute silence, but I'll let you lead that.
Thank you very much, Councillor Smith, and a very fitting tribute. Just a question around the time of the funeral. We've got the date.
It's next Thursday at 10 a.m.
10 a.m.
10 a.m.
It's in Barrack,
Yep.
Tobin Brothers. Thank you. Did anybody else want to say a few words? Beautiful tribute, thank you very much. As I call everyone to rise, if you would, I'd like to acknowledge John's wife, Wilma Barron, and to give her our condolences along with the rest of his family. Please stand as we call upon a minute's silence to remember the life of John Hastie. Thank you, everyone. Please be seated. Are there any other items to be raised? I now reapply the local law and move to confirmation of minutes. Is there a mover and a seconder to confirm the minutes of the council meeting held on Tuesday the 20th of August 2019? Moved by Councillor Jackson, seconded by Councillor Smith. Is there any dissent? There being no dissent, that is carried. Declaration of conflicts of interest. Does any councillor have a conflict of interest or a personal interest that they wish to declare? Fantastic. Moving on. Public question time. Ms Frost, we have 6 public questions tonight. Thank you very much.
Through you, Madam Mayor, yes, we have received 6 questions tonight. The first 2 questions have been received from Mr Gary Page. Thank you for your questions, Mr Page, concerning the Narre Power Station. These questions are being answered together, so I'll read them both out. What have council officers since learnt about prescribed industrial waste and the landfill gas, the yearly reporting to the EPA of only the carbon monoxide component of the exhaust gases, plus the access of horses to areas not on the trail marked on maps? The second question was, if the Narre Power Station is not required to meet the monitoring conditions of the EPA energy to waste guidelines, the actual monitoring of the exhaust gases is only carbon monoxide, then what protection does the council as the responsible planning authority have against litigation and any financial risk? The questions will be answered by the Manager, Sustainability and Waste.
Since March 2005, prescribed waste at the Taylors Road landfill is kept in separate cells from other general waste, and there is no gas extraction from the dedicated prescribed waste cells. Council officers are in discussion with Suez and the Environment Protection Authority to determine the rate of any gas extraction from historical cells which contained commingled waste. Monitoring required under the EPA licence confirms that emissions from the power station at Narre are compliant with EPA standards. The EDL power station is an EPA licensed facility, and EPA is the regulatory authority to ensure that any environmental and health risk from the site is managed. As per the licence conditions, EDL is required to undertake annual testing of the engines to confirm gas destruction to safe levels as per the EPA guidelines. The air emissions testings required under the EPA licence includes sulphur oxides, nitrogen oxides, carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, methane, ethane, propane, butane, pentane and other speciated volatile organic compounds with about 45 different parameters. Council is not an air quality expert and relies on EPA's advice on this matter. Any concerns relating to the quality and testing of the detailed interpretation of results need to be directed to the EPA. In addition to this annual testing, in March 2019, EDL completed an air quality impact assessment which concluded the following. The results of this air modelling indicate compliance with the design criteria as detailed in the State Environmental Protection Policy, Air Quality Management, at all sensitive receptors for all compounds. And overall, based on the results of the predictive dispersion modelling, the risk of adverse impacts on the nearby sensitive receptors is considered to be low, and the air quality at all sensitive receptors is predicted to be compliant with the design criteria by a significant margin. EPA confirmed that no follow-up action was required, which is indicative that EPA is satisfied that the power station is not posing a health or environmental risk. Access to the closed landfill by horses is considered a manageable risk for a site that is more than 20 years post-closure. Council officers are happy to discuss these matters in more detail at the upcoming meeting that has been scheduled with Mr Page.
Thank you. Our third question tonight has been submitted by Dale Watson. Is Dale Watson in the chamber? No. Fourth question tonight submitted by Hayden Levine. Thank you for your question. If the City of Casey aims to be the most livable city, why does it not have a climate action framework or plan when many other councils do? This question will be answered by the Manager, Sustainability and Waste.
Okay, these two questions were linked, so if I could have your indulgence, I'll answer the third one as well, if that's okay. The second one as well. The City of Casey has not. The City of Casey is a founding member of the South East Council for Climate Change Alliance, or SECA. We are working with SECA and Monash University in a regional approach to identify and prioritise key actions to support a carbon neutral community through development of a zero emissions strategy. The City of Casey Emissions Management Plan was adopted by Council in June 2018. The plan guides and supports the City towards the long-term goals of being carbon neutral by 2040 and includes a prioritised investment action program over the next 4 years. At the end of the 16-17 financial year, the City exceeded its 2012 greenhouse gas target reduction emissions by 24%, below those produced in 2010-11. The City of Casey has taken part in the Victorian Government's Take Two pledge, helping Victoria to reach its target to achieve net zero emissions by 2050. A number of councils' existing plans and strategies acknowledge climate change, including the City of Casey's Municipal Public Health and Wellbeing Plan, Emergency Resilience Plan, Municipal Emergency Management Plan, Casey Sustainability Plan, Integrated Water Management Plan, Municipal Fire Management Plan, Fire Management Communications Plan, and the City of Casey Biodiversity Strategy. Casey recently endorsed a commitment to join the Living Melbourne, our metropolitan urban forest, and the next council meeting will consider a review of the City of Casey revegetation strategy. In addition, Action 9 of the Western Port Green Wedge Management Plan commits that Casey develop council policy on climate change, including background research, investigation of the Casey context, and policy adoption. Background research and investigation of Casey-specific issues has commenced. In addition, the following provides some specific examples of climate change mitigation and adaptation projects: expansion of rooftop solar panels on council buildings, commitment to Procurement Australia's power purchase agreement to procure renewable electricity for 100% of its public lighting for the next 10 years, effective from July 2020. These actions will increase the proportion of council infrastructure powered by renewable energy from approximately 4.5% to 71%. City of Casey previously delivered the largest single council LED rollout of street lighting in Victoria. City of Casey is the first council in Victoria to put a fleet of 3 100% electric hard waste collection vehicles into service. Each electric truckload of waste will save approximately 180 kilograms of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, as compared with an equivalent diesel truck. Casey also has 4 electric vehicles for staff use and offsets 100% of fleet emissions through Green Fleet. Casey is participating in a group procurement of advanced waste processing technology that will allow councils in the southeast to transition away from landfill as the default disposal for residual waste. Methane and carbon dioxide produced in landfill are potent greenhouse gases. Casey is using drought-tolerant turf types, recycled water, rainwater tanks, stormwater harvesting and centralised irrigation systems for efficient water use to cope with the effects of lower rainfall and drought. We encourage the adoption and use of recycled Class A water for industry, agriculture and recreational purposes. Council is developing procedures to identify and support isolated elderly residents to cope with the effects of extreme temperature. We are creating artificial wetlands to filter stormwater, floodwater and encourage the use of water-sensitive urban design principles in stormwater management. Casey implements an annual fire prevention inspection program and has increased funding for fire prevention works. Officers are working with State Government's Future Coasts project to increase our understanding of how climate change will impact on the coastline around Western Port.
Thank you. Our 5th question tonight is from Mr John Glazebrook. Thank you. We've got 2 questions from Mr Glazebrook. The first concerns public question time. What evidence does Casey Council have that its ratepayers and residents support the existing bureaucratic model adopted by the Casey Mayor requiring pre-approval by management for all questions at public question time? This question will be answered by the Manager Governance.
Thank you for your question. Public question time is not a legislative requirement and is subject to council policy. Public question time is one of many avenues for members of the public to ask questions of the council. It is not intended to take the place of contacting a councillor or council laws directly to discuss an issue or to replace contacting council's customer services for assistance. Rather, public question time is designed to allow for clarification of issues of public interest. Questions are required to be submitted in advance of council meetings. This ensures a considered and accurate answer is able to be provided. The policy outlines a clear scope for all public questions, noting that consideration at a council meeting may not be an appropriate forum for all questions residents may have. Thank you.
Thank you. And our final question tonight, also from Mr Glazebrook, is that this week the Dandenong Mayor announced her support for a national campaign to raise the New Start allowance by $75 a week. Will the Mayor of Casey and Casey Council also support this campaign? This question will be answered by the Director of Community Life.
Though Council does not have a formalised position on this matter, Council acknowledges the need to support the most vulnerable in our community and contributes through grants, partnerships and referral support through our municipality.
Thank you. There are no further questions.
Thank you, Ms Frost. Excuse me, Mr Glazebrook. We need you to be silent in the gallery. Thank you. Thank you, Ms Frost. Now move on to officers' reports for initial consideration. Are there any items that councillors wish to discuss this evening? Councillor Aziz. Item 7.3? Fantastic. So item 7.3, I'd like to withdraw item 7.4. And if I could go to Councillor Cristani.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Item 7.9.
Thank you very much. Councillors, are there any other items that you wish to discuss this evening? That being the case, I would like to move in block items 7.1, 7.2, 7.5, 7.6, 7.7, 7.8, and none in closed council. Could I have a mover and a second to accept that we move the recommendations in block? So those items that I've just called out will not be withdrawn for discussion. They're actually, their recommendations will be carried. Moved by Councillor Rowe, second by Councillor Saray. Is there any dissent? There being no dissent, that is carried. We'll move on to officers' reports withdrawn for discussion. I'd like to first go to Councillor Aziz. Oh, sorry, I don't know why I think you're over there. I've lost my sense of direction. Councillor Aziz, item 7.3, you wanted to withdraw that so that we can discuss that in closed council? All right, so we've got that before us. So just for everybody's benefit, at the end of the meeting, we'll be moving that we close the meeting and go into closed council to discuss this item. Thank you very much. Now, item 7.4, that's moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Cristani. Thank you very much. Councillors, it's a great pleasure that I bring to you something that I was very passionate about when I became Mayor this year. It's something that's been heavy on my heart for the last 5 years. It's something that I have the full support of my fellow councillors on, and something that's so important. And what I'd like to preface by saying is that we actually support our Casey North Information Support Service, Cranbourne Information Support Service, because we acknowledge the absolutely fantastic job that they do. And I know that Manager Susan McGee from Casey North Information Support Service is here with us tonight, and board member Kay Morland, and we really welcome you to the gallery. Council's 1819 action plan calls for a business case for the establishment of community service organisation hubs in the north and south of Casey. These two major hubs would be reliant on significant financial investment and could take years to develop. The Cranbourne and Casey North Community Information and Support Services are two of Casey's lead community service organisations who work with our most disadvantaged residents. Years of growth has put pressure on these information and support services, and their buildings are too small to keep up with the demand. Casey North Community Information Support Service lease has almost expired. It has expired, and their tenure is uncertain into the future. These problems need a solution and now cannot wait 5 years or more. Council's additional funding for access to suitable buildings will make sure that the Community Information and Support Service can continue providing critical services to Casey's most vulnerable residents. So if we look at Casey North Information and Support Service on the left and Cranbourne Information Support Service on the right, Casey North, they need certainty about tenure. They need to know that they're going to be there until it is time for them to move into their forever home. We've also got Cranbourne Information Support Service that are secure, but they are growing beyond capacity. They need co-locatable services that aren't easily delivered there because of absence of public transport and absence of office space. So a different solution is being offered to them as an interim, but both are interim. We understand that, and we do recognise the impost that is going to place on certainly Casey North and Information Support Service to move and then move again in 5 or so years. But what we hope this will do is give greater certainty. We certainly know it will give more room to the service, and I know it's not as much as perhaps was hoped for, but this is what we can deliver at the moment, particularly as we're outside of a budget cycle, and it is with great pleasure that I deliver this report and ask for my fellow councillors' support on the recommendation. Is there any dissent or are there any questions? That being the case, that is carried. Thank you, councillors. I really appreciate it. Moving on to item 7.9, Councillor Cristani.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to move the recommendation in my name.
Moved by Councillor Cristani, seconded by Councillor Jackson.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson.
Please introduce.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I want to first acknowledge the stellar work done by Mr Bernard Rowan, and you were flanked by a team of skilled professionals, including Charles, who is with you today, Jess and Will Babington, who wrote the report as well, and there's many others I'm sure not listed. Here at the City of Casey, we are deeply committed to public accountability and sound financial management. I'm therefore pleased that tonight officials have presented for our approval the draft 2018-19 financial and performance statements. It is worth noting that these items were considered on the 27th of August 2019 by Council's Audit and Risk Committee and have been subject to review by the Victorian Auditor General's Office. The community can have confidence that our processes for preparing this material are robust and well governed. I thank everyone involved for the preparation of this material. Coming to the results for the 2018-19 financial year, Casey can report an operating result for the year of $277.4 million, which is vitally important to sustain service delivery and to fund our capital works program. Revenue of $598.8 million, and this was $171.5 million higher than budget and mainly driven by additional developer contributions of $153 million, reflecting higher than expected development activity here at the City of Casey. Expenses of $321.5 million were 1% higher than budget. Casey's performance results for the 2018-19 financial year include significant increase in successful animal management prosecutions attributed to the introduction of a dedicated prosecutions team within Council, a reduced proportion of waste diverted from landfill, which was impacted by issues within the recycling industry, as well as an audit which found 11% of recycled waste was contaminated, a slight decline in the proportion of statutory planning decisions upheld by VCAT. However, only 3% of the 1,128 applications decided were taken to VCAT. And may I just pause there for a moment, Madam Mayor? That is a lot lower than some other councils. We're actually, it's a good representation that we do get it right even before it gets onto VCAT. So only 3% end up at VCAT. These are pleasing results that demonstrate the great work happening across Council. It is my absolute pleasure to present that to the Chamber tonight. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Cristani. And could I just defer to the officers and preface it by saying What a great job you do. Thank you so much for articulating just the progress that we're making, the challenges that we face. We really do appreciate all that you do. Mr. Rowan, I'd like to defer to you, if you don't mind, just to expand a little bit. And councillors, if you'll note, we do have supplementary reports on our desks. So, Mr. Rowan, thank you.
Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. Just to update you that we've received notification today that the Victorian Auditor General's Office has indicated they are comfortable with the financial statements and the way in which officials have responded to questions. So on that basis, they've cleared us to sign the accounts tonight, which is the resolution that we're seeking from you.
Thank you very much. And Councillor Aziz, you had a question.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to echo Councillor Cristani's sentiments in congratulating the officers once again on an outstanding effort in compiling what is a very complex budget. But I have a question for the CFO for the benefit of the community. I'm just wondering if you can advise us as to where the debt against Bunjil Place is at, where it started, where it's at, and how many more years is it going to take us to completely pay it off?
Thank you for your question, and through you, Madam Mayor. The debt is reported in the financial statements as our interest-bearing liabilities. It was a 10-year loan agreement that we signed, and it was for 62 million, and we are on track. We've made all of our payments, and so there's no further issues with that. But you can refer to it in the balance sheet, which is the second of the financial statements, and effectively it's sort of spread across. It's now at 53 million.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And given that it was a 10-year loan, I think there were assumptions when we opened Bunjil Place that at our rate of payment, and also given the favourable interest rate environment which continues to improve, that the debt would be paid off in around 7 years, and that was about 2 years ago. Is that still the case?
The interest rate arrangement that we have is a fixed rate loan. So yeah, we are on track with making all the payments, and we can certainly update you at a future meeting if you would like about the status of that. But yeah, we are on track with all of our commitments.
All right, well, Madam Mayor, I know, I don't know if you've called for dissent, but I'm just hoping for an "are you aware" at this stage.
Of course.
So just contextualising what the CFO has said, we've already, 2 years in, paid some $10 million off the loan, and we've done that within a rate-capped environment, and we've continued to deliver a breadth of services and ongoing rollout of infrastructure, which in my view is quite substantial and probably unparalleled within the local government sector in Victoria. And this is a great good news story out of the budget for the community, in addition to all the other good news stories. But this amazing facility, which cost $125 million to build, and it now only has a debt against it of 53 million, which is on track to pay within a very short number of years, relatively speaking, is an amazing story that should be celebrated. And there is a reason why I've asked the CFO those questions, because the budget papers are obviously quite substantial, and I'm sure not every member of the community will get the opportunity to go through it with a fine-tooth comb. So I wanted to pluck that particularly out of it, because it's a story that we should continue to celebrate at every budget, and it means that the money that's been built in probably a decade ago now to fund Bunjil Place and to create that deposit that we used initially, in addition to the 10 million we got through the federal government, and also the sale of some underperforming assets, demonstrates the planning that has gone into this place, but also says that once the debt is paid off, there will be a substantial amount of money in the budget for us to commence the next big infrastructure project as Casey continues to cope with the highest growth rate of any city in Australia. I think the Cranbourne corridor has been recognised as such only 12 months ago. So I just wanted to highlight that aspect. And once again, I thank the CFO and his team for a stellar effort in pulling together our budget.
Thank you, Councillor Aziz. Couldn't have put it better myself. In fact, I couldn't put it as good as you, actually. Going to Councillor Smith. You have a question?
Madam Mayor, are you aware, I'm going to jump on the back of Councillor Aziz, which I often do. Can I start off by congratulating Councillor Aziz, because it was without his effort, the financial management for the finance of Bunjil Place would not be as it is. But I thought it was really timely. Tonight we've been hearing lots of announcements from the foyer about what's on there tonight. Barrack Primary School's here tonight. They're here for, I think, 3 nights in a row for nearly sell-out crowd, so that's 800 people each night. For over 20 years, Barrack Primary School travelled to Warrigal every year for its school production. They don't have to anymore. They come to Casey, they stay in Casey, come to Bunjil Place. Imagine the savings to those families for the petrol and all the other costs that would have been in going to Warrigal every year. So it's a really timely experience to hear that announcement. Barrack's in the building, and the creation of Bunjil Place and the management in terms of its finances. You know, it's a testament to all the councillors who were on council at the time, which is many of the people around this table.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. And could I also pay tribute to Councillor Aziz? You really steered a very steady ship in that direction, and we got lots of surprises around savings that we could, place on the loan to reduce the debt for the ratepayer. And that's ultimately who wins, but we've got this wonderful place to enjoy at the same time. So thank you, Councillor Aziz, and thank you, Councillor Smith. Councillor Cristani, thank you, and to our wonderful officers before us, thank you so much for all that you do. So, councillors, I'm putting this before you. Is there any dissent on this matter? There being no dissent, that is carried. Thank you very much. Petitions and petitions. Are there any petitions or joint letters that councillors wish to present? Councillor Ablett. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. I do have a petition before me from the residents of Worthing Road, Devon Meadows, to have their road sealed, and I'd like to move the recommendations that are on the screen in my name.
Moved by Councillor Ablett and seconded by Councillor Saray.
Yes. What the recommendations state, Madam Mayor, is that we will be holding a public meeting to discuss all aspects of the sealing of the road, costs, etc., which is a stock standard procedure. And there are 19 signatories, and we look forward to meeting with them and discussing those possibilities. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Councillor Ablett. Is there any dissent? There being no dissent, that is carried. Councillors, I jumped ahead. Considerations of reports of committees. Is there a mover and seconder to receive and note the record of assembly of councillors as listed? Moved by Councillor Rose, seconded by Councillor Smith. Is there a mover and seconder to confirm the minutes of the Audit and Risk Committee meeting held on the 23rd of May? Moved by Councillor Saray, seconded by Councillor Jackson. Is there any dissent? There being no dissent, that is carried. Now, back to petitions, Council. Sorry about that. Are there any other petitions that you wish to raise? No? Great. Move on to notices of motion. And the first notice of motion is with Councillor Ablett, road safety in the coastal village area of the city of Casey. Thank you, Councillor Ablett.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I do have a notice of motion in relation to speed reduction and signage for the coastal villages area.
Moved by Councillor Ablett.
I'd like to move. I'll just give my colleagues a chance to read. This is an amended notice of motion. I've added in a lot more safety factors after talking to residents for a couple of hours over the weekend in the coastal villages.
Everybody had time to have a read?
Right.
So moved by Councillor Ablett, seconded by Councillor Flannery.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd just like to open by reading the front page of the Herald Sun from a couple of days ago. Victoria's top traffic cop wants a review of speed limits, more traffic cameras and a crackdown on drug drivers to curb the road toll. Assistant Commissioner Stephen Lean has asked Victorians to nominate roads where the speeds should be cut, and I've added that on the bottom of this here, as you'll see as I move through. Madam Mayor, as you know, your father is very lucky to be alive, and we're very thankful that he is alive, although he's still not in a very good state after being hit by a car in Tooradin. There are also 38,000 boats registered to the Warneet Yacht Club, and there are concerns of residents down there who live close to the road of near accidents every weekend. And also I've had some great input which I'm going to give to officers, Miss New, later from Cannons Creek, and also Blind Bight, where they have traffic concerns. But the main one that I'm going to highlight tonight is Tooradin, because of the amount of traffic that goes through there and the number of accidents and near misses that we've had. And you'll see on the screen there that I am asking for a Vic Roads to work with our officers and a report to come back at the end of the day. The shot on your screen I put up there that I believe that that really does stand out, hit you in the face as you come into Pearcedale, and that all of the coastal villages, towns should have big signs like this that really stand out and tell people this is the speed limit. So whatever the speed limit might be that might be deemed by the report to be slower than that on some unmade roads, I would hope, in the coastal villages area, it certainly does stand out and people get the message. Also, a lot of other traffic initiatives where on the side streets at Tooradin, where you can drive straight off the road from doing 80 kilometres an hour, you can drive straight into a side street where there's a pedestrian crossing with no markings whatsoever. The photo on your screen you're seeing at the moment, this is coming from Cranbourne towards Tooradin. It says prepare to stop. If the yellow lights on that sign are flashing, it means that somebody has pushed the button on the pedestrian crossing and you can prepare to stop. Unfortunately, if you're coming from the other way from Phillip Island, there isn't one of these, and in the afternoon you're looking directly into the sun and you hardly see the traffic lights or the crossing in the middle of the town, and that is a major problem. I've also asked for our officers and Vic Roads to look at speed cameras. That's the view coming from Phillip Island. There's no warning that the traffic lights that you can't quite see are in the distance, and this is a major problem for Tooradin. There it is there. This is the side street on this side. The South Gippsland highway's in the background there. In a moment you'll see there's a road that comes in and goes straight over that pedestrian crossing only 10-15 metres away, and I watched cars come in doing at least 60-70 kilometres an hour going straight over that crossing where if you stepped out you would just get knocked over. So we need to put, that's it there, some sort of signage up, whether yellow flashing lights or whether we extend the traffic lights themselves to come onto the footpath and have warning signs as well. The side street at the moment, I'm told by locals, I saw was 50 kilometres an hour. It should be 20 maximum as you come in there. Also, there should be signs up that there are speed cameras active to slow things down. I know when we slowed the speed limit from 100 to 80 after a fatal accident outside the Lighthouse Christian College, police really patrolled that really well, and it's something I haven't got here, that police patrol, hopefully when these things take place in Tooradin and the coastal villages, particularly Tooradin with the through traffic going to Phillip Island as well, really patrol Tooradin, because what we are doing is a town plan where we're asking people to come from Clyde, Narre Warren North, all to come down to the beach down at Tooradin to park. We're going to have extra parking, trees. It's going to be a real tourist town. So we want tourists to be safe who are coming out onto a road, which sometimes, I was talking to a person on the weekend who comes out a road early in the morning, it's 80 k's, and B-dubs have been going through, he believes to 100 to 110 kilometres an hour going through Tooradin. So he says that there does definitely need something to be done there.
Councillor Ablett, would you like an extension of time?
Oh, just a couple of minutes.
2 minutes.
I'll wrap up.
Moved by Councillor Cristani, second by
Yeah.
Councillor Saray. Is there any
And
dissent? No? Thank you.
All the signs, like I've said at Pearcedale, be put around that residents get some feedback as to what, be consulted and given some feedback as to what's happened after the report comes back, because we'd really like to see some action down there, and I'm sure you would too, Madam Mayor. You go down there a lot to see your father and mingle. And that all these traffic practices be implemented right around the coastal villages area. I know in tonight's agenda there was a lot of roads addressed for safety reasons. None of them were in the coastal villages because there are that many roads that we do need to reduce the speed limit on. And one of the points that I've added after the report comes back is that we do write to Stephen Lean, the Commissioner, and officers can nominate what roads that they would like to see a speed reduction, because he has made publicly on the front of the Herald Sun that invitation for us to do so. I also want to thank the state government, who I rang Luke Donnellan's office, who were very positive about this and gave us the green light. They would support this 100%. I've also rang Gary Maher's office, and I know Nicole's here tonight, sitting up the back. Anything that saves lives, they were right behind. Also Pauline Richards, and also Jordan Coognail, spoke to her, her ward butts up. They are in power, they have the money to get this stuff happening, and they have said they will support changes that the Vic Roads recommend, and that's really, really important, because that means the stuff that we really need doing can get some funding. So I'm really pleased with that. I'll leave it at that, Madam Mayor, but I think we've got a pretty comprehensive list there, but I'm sure the review will bring out even better things to do from more people who are more learned than me. I just spoke to locals, but I've seen the results, and so have you, Madam Mayor, of cars just coming straight through the pedestrian crossing. We tried to get another crossing up the other side of the footy ground for the school kids and CFA, but that was knocked back by Vic Road. So I'll leave it at that, but these things need to happen to ensure the safety of people. As you can see by the Commissioner putting on the front page the other day, it is absolutely crucial that we start saving more lives. The road toll is horrific. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Councillor Ablett. I just wondered if I could ask a question. Should we have Neil Burgess MP up there, given that he's the MP for the area?
I thought about that, but at the moment the state government has said that there's no need to advocate any further. I mean, he can be notified, but this review is going to go on regardless. We can write to him and tell him that the review is taking place, but there's no role for him, because it's already been agreed to by the state government that they're going to fund it and get behind it. So that's terrific.
Maybe just a courtesy letter?
I'll let it to him.
Yep.
Well, happy
okay,
to
that's fine. I
put
think
a
we
letter.
can take that on notice.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillors, we have this before us. Are there any questions, or is there any dissent? That being the case, that is carried. Thank you, Councillor Ablett. Moving on to item 3259, Councillor Saray.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to move that in my name.
Moved by Councillor Saray, seconded by Councillor Jackson. Would you like to introduce, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. On Friday last week, not last week, the Friday before, we were, the council, the community were made aware of what was the intention for the level crossing removal at Barrack. This notice of motion is expressing our disappointment that the state government didn't take in any of the considerations that we put forward and the reasons why we gave to have those options.
Yep,
you know,
that's right.
to have them as options for the Barrack level crossing removal. So tonight is to obviously express our disappointment that the decision to give us the cheapest option with no train station, not providing a full upgrade as it deserves, especially because the state government designated Barrack as that area as health and education precinct. The photo up there is actually what has been done at Essendon level crossing. The picture that they've actually put up on the Level Crossing Authority website for Barrack is nothing like this, and unfortunately I think it's very misleading, but this is actually what they will be doing, which is road under rail, similar to what we have at Narry Cranbourne Road. Now, I'm not sure if anybody remembers, but back in 2011 when we had those terrible floods, Narry Cranbourne Road was closed off for weeks because of flooding. For weeks. It was horrendously inconvenient for all of our commuters, especially drivers. No one from the south of Casey could get across to pretty much Princes Highway, which was really, really bad. It was, for weeks, we could not get to the other side and vice versa. We couldn't get across at Barrack, couldn't get across at Narry Cranbourne, Narry Warren Station. We couldn't even get across at South Gippsland Highway to get across the road. It was really bad, and I don't think that the solution that was, or the option that's been taken by the state government is actually what is that for that precinct. Yes, so that's all I really wanted to say in terms of our expression of disappointment for that. However, we understand that there may not be a lot of time to perhaps change the minds of the state government. So we would like to work with the state government in improving perhaps what they would tend to do like they've done at Essendon, where it's just 2 walls and no real safety measures. I don't think there's the where the pedestrians come through very narrow. We would like to widen that up. That's some of the solutions. We'd like better amenity. We would like the walls to where the pedestrians cross to be level. One of the reasons why we put our proposal forward is because obviously we have the university, we have a lot of retirement villages, we have 2 hospitals, St John of God and Casey Hospital. We also have the school for vision impaired. So this has not been taken into account while making this decision. It's very, very important that we do take that into account, considering that will be a lot of people with disabilities coming through the Barrack station. People from the other side of town come to that school. So it's very important that that those things are taken into account when the design is being done. So I hope that the state government takes our suggestions on board, and we would very much like to help or to have that conversation with them, but we do express our disappointment that they have just gone for the cheapest option, which is really, really unfortunate. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Saray. I'd like to defer to the other ward councillor. Councillor Jackson, would you like to say anything?
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I might take it as a bit of an are you aware. Madam Mayor, we've obviously had the announcement in relation to this, and firstly, absolutely, I know everyone in Barrack and the local community is dying out for this thing to go. So in no way are we as council getting in the road of that. What we're making sure is when it does go, that it provides the best amenity for our residents, and for especially those coming with disabilities from the train station to the hospital, or for the students that go to Federation University there as well. Having a quick look at design myself, Madam Mayor, there's quite a slope down and a slope up, and for me, working in the field of personal injury and understanding how difficult it is for injured people to get around, I think that's going to cause a bit of problem for those people, especially when there is that's the main public transport, the station there in Barrack, to get them to St John of God, Casey Hospital, and all that medical precinct that we do have there. In saying that, Madam Mayor, my biggest what I also want to get into, and Councillor Saray's touched on it, is a new station for Barrack. I mean, the station's not falling apart by any means of other stations you see across the state, but I think the residents of Barrack and the surrounding area deserve a new station. I think the residents of Casey deserve a new station. And I think especially when, Madam Mayor, we have all this new growth and being built down Clyde Road, and if you've ever sat on Clyde Road and watched the traffic funnel north up Clyde Road essentially to the Barrack train station, that's where they go, Madam Mayor, until hopefully the new station is eventually built in Clyde, that's where they'll go. So I think if we're going to get in there and do the work, let's do it all. Let's get a new station, and let's make sure we get the design right. Though, Madam Mayor, I will say, I did quickly jump on the level crossing removal project website, and it said the photo was artist impression only, subject to change. So we'll be very glad to help subject to change, but we are absolutely 100% behind getting this level crossing removed, and we'd love to work with our colleagues in State Parliament to ensure that we get the best outcome we can.
Thank you, Councillor Ray, Councillor Saray and Councillor Jackson. Thank you very much. 2 wonderful advocates for this area, and I think we're all agreed that we want the best outcome for the residents of Barrack, but also so many of us travel there too. So I think what I was also impressed with is the addition in there about the request by Minister Alan Tudge, not even 2 weeks after the federal government were re-elected, Minister Tudge came down to Jason Wood's office, met with myself, and impressed how much he wanted to bundle up the promises that Jason Wood had made, wanted to deliver those as soon as possible, bundle them up with the level crossing removal, so that the impost on the residents was as minimal as possible. So he didn't want 2 lots of impost. And so that there are efficiencies, and also certainly in terms of cost as well. But I think getting a whole a holistic outcome at the one time would be amazing. So that includes the car parking that were promised by the federal government, and also those upgrades to Kangan Drive and Clyde Road. So I think this is a great way just to tell the government that we want to work with them to get the best outcome, and that's exactly what we're doing. Now, Councillor Aziz has got a question.
In the framework of Are You Aware, Madam Mayor, and I just want to congratulate Councillor Saray and Councillor Jackson on raising this issue. It might physically sit in their ward, but the reality is, as Councillor Jackson has identified, Clyde Road is such an important thoroughfare for people in Springfield Ward, the ward that I represent along with Councillor Flannery, but also the people of your ward in Mayfield along with Councillor Rowe, and possibly even Councillor Ablett in terms of people coming from Ballaballa Ward. So it's a critical thoroughfare, and Councillor Jackson is right, everyone wants that crossing to go. But unfortunately in this situation we see a little bit of history repeating itself, because I recall in 2010 when Clyde Road was being duplicated, this council screamed until it was blue in the face that grade separation was absolutely critical as part of that development. And I wonder how much less it would have cost had we achieved grade separation at the time that the government was duplicating Clyde Road. Now we're revisiting it because even with the duplication, congestion is horrendous because of the growth that we have had. So I think it's important that we don't do these things in a piecemeal fashion, that we be as strategic as possible in terms of anticipating future growth and really addressing the station issue, but also addressing the visual amenity of what is one of our most pristine areas in Casey, being the approach to Barrack Village, and the criticality of that location to a recognised education and health precinct under the Planning Act. So there's a number of dynamics in there, and this is really, really important. So I stand here on behalf of the residents of my ward to join the voices of the advocacy that's been presented by the councillors representing Edrington Ward, as I'm sure that sentiment is felt by every councillor around this table. So congratulations, and it's another call to the state government to heed your message and hopefully review this matter.
Thank you, Councillor Aziz. Are there any other questions? On behalf of Councillor Rowe and myself, we'd like to echo our support. We think you're doing a great job. This is the right thing to do, and let's pray that we get the right outcome. Is there any dissent? There being no dissent, that is carried. Urgent business. Are there any items of urgent business tonight, councillors? There being no urgent business, I now ask that the council move into, I ask for a mover and second that council move into closed council to consider item 7.3 as it concerns personal matters. Moved by Councillor Saray and seconded by Councillor Rowe. And a 5-minute break, I'm sorry, and what did I say? What did I say? Sorry? Oh, okay. And a 5-minute break. Thank you very much, councillors. Is there any dissent to that? There being no dissent, that is carried. Thank you, everyone who attended tonight. Have a great evening. Have a safe journey home.